I. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. NBV back in house, Northern Black Voices.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I am two.
Yes, sir.
And I got two co-hosts or hosts or
Yeah.
other hosts with me here today. Ukuluwa and Negus.
Kulua.
Up
It's
in
a
the
beautiful
days.
name, man.
Kulua.
And Negus.
Love that name, boy.
Yep. So today we're going to talk about, today we're going to just continue with our Black History Month, theme that we've been doing for the last...
Not today, every
3
day. We're
weeks.
always starting up with this Black history stuff, man.
Well, we're buying into the whole Black History
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
We're buying into it. Because, Black people are only allowed to celebrate themselves in February.
That's
So
right.
here we are.
When all our struggles been years.
We got the coldest and the shortest month.
Yeah.
Hey man, we get the scraps.
Yes, sir.
So today we're gonna dig into MLK a little bit. For those who were too young to know, that's Martin Luther King.
Yes, Dr.
And
Martin
Dr.
Martin Luther King
Jr. There you go.
Yeah.
So today we're just gonna dissect a few of his, dissect a few of his speeches.
His
Yes.
speeches
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
his for the movement and civil rights and all that, yeah.
Yeah, just kind of, I think it lends to what you hear from us a lot, whereas we're underappreciated, pretty much like the beat.
Mm-hmm.
We hinted at that last
Oh, yeah.
episode,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're going to start pointing it out some more.
Yes, sir.
We just want, a lot of people, I think what a lot of people know about Martin Luther King, I guess I should say that differently. A lot of people don't know a lot about
Because
Martin.
they don't go into the further research.
They don't.
right?
Yes,
So-
they don't look into him themselves. So
Yeah.
we generally just take what the establishment give us on him, and that's pretty much it. And a lot of people pretty much just know the "I Have a Dream" speech,
Yes.
Yeah.
which you could see why the system would hold on to that and put.
He had like how many speeches?
Yeah.
He had like
And-
how many speeches?
And we're going to talk about that today.
And we're gonna talk
Yes,
about
sir.
that.
No, I'm saying he had like how many speeches?
Come on, he was a
He
civil
was an
That's what I'm
activist,
saying.
so
Yeah,
So he's got
pretty
like a
sure
lot of
he did a lot,
speeches, man.
He was a civil
But that's-
rights leader,
yeah.
so like he's
Anna Pastor.
And that's the one that
Or
stood
preacher.
out the most, I
Yes.
guess,
That's a
right?
lot of talking.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's his life's work actually.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
As a preacher, a pastor, and
Minister,
the leader. I would say, would you call him the leader of the civil rights movement? Because I don't know.
He kind of started with that though. He got
No.
not
He
he
didn't-
started, but he got a lot of stuff put on that, like brought that to the
I would
light.
say he became the face of
the
it.
face of it. Okay.
One of the faces, actually.
One of
How
them,
would you
yes,
put
I would
it?
agree with that.
Yeah.
I would say, because the civil rights movement started with Rosa Parks.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. After that happened with her, he kind of. I think he had another speech about that too, and it went where like it blew up.
Here's how I would put it. I would say so. It started with Rosa Parks because she refused to give up the her seat on the bus.
Right.
I think a lot of people know that. That was 1954.
She was the first known for that.
First, well, yeah.
Yes.
Well, first recognized
In the
that.
media, right?
Or that made a scene about it.
Yeah.
I suppose. And that was 1954, I believe.
Yeah.
1954 or 55.
Right.
And so a lot of things transpired because of that. So you
Because
had
of
a
that.
lot of
Because he-
people speaking out
Yeah.
because I think the
Yeah.
opportunity is right.
So
now.
that
why
led
not?
to one of the greatest actual sign of protests
Yeah.
in American history,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
bus
yeah.
boycott.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. Did he start the boycott though?
No,
Was
no,
it-
no.
Who started the
no,
boycott? From her getting the recognition for being the person that didn't, right? But-
No, I think because he started.
Yeah, that's an actual good question because
Mhm.
I Have a Dream is 1963.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
way after.
That's way- yeah.
So
I think the ruckus that was caused because of that allowed a lot of people to be able to. I think you got a lot of activists arising out of it, and I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised if we don't know half of it.
because think about it, right?
You said it was 1963?
His
That was the
speech,
million.
his
That was
speech.
the sorry. I Have a Dream speech.
Okay, because like, I was gonna say it was like 1950, 55, somewhere around there. Like,
That
it
was
a
when
boycott.
That was when
Yeah,
the civil
boycott
rights.
stuff,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Right. So that's kind of like you can credit 1954, 55
Five
for
around it, yeah.
the beginning of the civil rights
Yeah.
movement with the Rosa
Rosa
Parks
Parks.
Yes.
incident.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, like, you just mentioned something about it led to so that incident led to a lot of other activists rising up and speaking up. So it actually reminded me of what happened in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like, I don't want to say history repeating itself, but it seems like it always takes something happens drastically, and
In
black people are like,
order to-
fuck it, we're not taking this shit anymore, and then it leads the charge. So we'll talk about something like that in an episode called leadership and becoming a leader.
Yeah.
And do we really need someone to take the charge before we actually wake up? Because it seems like if you go back to history, it's like something happens, someone's like, nah, fuck it, we're not taking this anymore.
Yeah.
And then, which is not a good thing sorry, I'm not saying that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is,
It takes
waiting
why
how
are
far
we-
it take. Yeah, waiting.
why are we waiting
Yeah.
for that to happen?
I think it speaks to the type of people we are, and I think this is good for non-blacks to take note of, actually, because I think one of the fears for giving us unity or giving us equality is that we'll do what was done to us.
Right.
And I think situations like this prove that we're not like that. It takes a lot to get us angry and get us riled up.
Yeah.
And it's the same people that
What you talking about, yo? I've been seeing the rap videos and the movies.
yeah, that's acting.
Welcome to the media, boy.
But
Yeah.
I mean, because you can't, it wouldn't. Rosa Parks isn't the first and isn't the only
Exactly.
person to have problems with sitting
course
on the
not.
back of the bus.
Of course not.
But it eventually you get fed up of being treated a certain way,
That's
and it takes it. Look how much it took for someone to finally be like, you know what, fuck this,
that
you know?
situation is fucked up
Yeah.
though, because even when I watch, not to say the footage, but you watch what was going on around it, it's just like these white people were really like taking charge of this bus and say, yo, listen, the only way you guys can sit
Mhm.
is if we're not really on the bus. But once a white person comes on, you better get up and get
Yeah,
that
you
seat.
got
Mhm.
that was
Yeah,
the
You
that's
know
rule.
what I'm
how it
saying?
works.
And
That's how it works.
that's some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And
That was the
it's-
rule.
it's- man,
That was the rule.
I mean, we're still going through stuff like that today. It's not
Yeah.
us anymore, but
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's whether it's the
It's
the
fun.
boardroom or
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying. So I'm glad you mentioned Rosa Parks wasn't the only person that was fed up,
Yeah.
and she wasn't the first.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about. So a lot of people like to call this woman the Canadian Rosa Parks, but actually
Oh, okay.
Rosa Parks is the American her. So her name is Viola Desmond.
Yes.
And she had a similar case. I think not a few years, maybe decades before Rosa Parks
Yeah.
in Canada. So we'll have an
And there's
episode on
still
Viola
more
Desmond
too.
and the story of
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
at a later date.
Yeah.
But anyway, so today we're gonna dissect 5 speakings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So
Alright.
2 are gonna be from his "I Have a Dream" speech,
Mhm.
and 3 are gonna be from later speeches that
Yeah.
one's from an interview and 2 are from 2 other speeches that he had done.
Yeah.
So we wanted to go through a few of these clips and discuss them and talk about them and what they mean to us
Yeah.
and what we think it means for black folks as a whole.
All right.
okay.
All right, so without further ado,
For those who cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds.
All right.
Mhm.
So, in that clip, so let me summarize it a little bit for in case it was hard to hear for anybody.
Yeah.
So Dr. King mentioned that black folks got a bad check.
Mhm.
All right. So like what is he talking about? So at that point, the crowd went wild. Like a lot of people were cheering and going crazy. So this is before. So this is part of the "I Have a Dream" speech, but this is before he got to the "I Have a Dream" part of the speech.
Yeah.
Right. So Dr. King said, black folks was promised certain things, and
They
those
weren't
promises did not go through.
Mhm.
So it's like he wrote us a bad check. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like, what do you guys get from that though?
Well, I'm guessing because I honestly don't know, but I'm guessing that whatever erupted throughout the civil rights movement,
Yeah.
or
Right.
up to that point, I suppose promises were made, unless he's just speaking in general.
So
We're
wait,
people now. And,
Sorry, so let me be more
Yeah.
specific because he's speaking to a specific promise from the Declaration of Independence
And-
and
yes,
and the
yeah,
Constitution.
yeah,
So
yeah.
where America promised that all men would be guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Isn't that always the story though?
What do you mean?
I find like we've been promised a lot of things from way back then, right?
Well, to be devil's advocate,
Mhm.
Yes.
were we even considered citizens or men that's
But that's-
that's what threw me off about the speech about that
About that
specific
quote.
part of the
Okay,
speech,
right.
Okay.
because he's mentioning the amendment, sorry, the Constitution, but I mean, if we were considered slaves,
Right.
who's to give us
But
blood?
so the
From
Declaration of Independence
Yeah.
did declare that all men are created equal.
Equal.
I understand
Yeah.
that.
So he's referring to that part of it. Right. So before that,
Yeah.
black folks were considered 3/5 of a human
Of a human,
in the United States.
Mhm.
After the Declaration of Independence, so it said all men, but I know what you're
You're
saying.
saying, yeah,
So
yeah,
did it
yeah.
include
in
black
that?
men?
Mhm.
So I think he was understanding that we were included.
We were included in that, yeah.
in my opinion.
Here's why here's one of the reasons why I asked that question, because in they amended they added the 14th Amendment to the Constitution was done in 1868,
Right.
right? And that granted African Americans the right to citizenship,
Right.
Okay.
right? But it didn't define voting.
All right.
Voting was actually allowed in 1870,
Okay.
right? So
it
I'm
was 18, yeah, okay. All right.
yeah,
all right,
around
yeah,
1870,
yeah, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
If I maybe yeah, no, I'm right.
Mm.
Right. So my point is, when he's talking about what the Constitution said, I mean, the 14th Amendment, like it was amended in 1868 to actually include African Americans as the right to citizenship.
Right.
Okay.
Like we didn't have that before.
Got,
So
right.
and again, I don't know much about the Constitution, to be honest.
Right.
From Guyana, I'm living in Canada now. I don't know much about the U.S. Constitution, but that's where I'm confused when it comes to that part of the speech.
Okay, gotcha. So my understanding of that part of the speech is that the right for liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness was granted to
To all people.
all people
even
of the
including
United
of
States of
color,
America.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the standpoint
But
I
they
think
still single
he
us
is
out.
coming from, right?
Yeah.
So these things were promised to all of us,
Mhm.
but in 1963,
Mhm.
Dr. King is saying like, where is it at? Like, you guys promised us all these things, like what up, right? He's like,
They
you
still
guys
had the
gave us a
colored
bad
buses,
check,
the colored washrooms, and all that. Like, you know what I mean?
right?
Separation. So.
So like shout out to Sean King, because
Mm.
that's where I got these clips from.
Okay.
I remember he did a episode on his podcast a few years ago where he was talking about these things here. So did those promises fail us, or like Atu is saying, were we even included
In the first place.
in those
In the
promises?
first place. Yeah.
in the
yeah,
first
yeah,
place.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good question, because from my understanding, we're all included, and this is what all men should have had. When you say men, we're talking about people, not
Yes.
not just
Mhm.
dudes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
Yes.
So he was at a point where it's like, like, where's our money at? Like, you promised me this money. Where my money at?
Oh, here's
Yeah,
a nice thing.
yeah.
That was what? That was
That was 1963.
1963.
Yeah.
What are we? 2022.
Yeah, we're in 2022.
Where that check at, bro?
Where the check at? So can you imagine that? So Dr. King is talking about, yo, like what it do? Why are we being treated like this in 1963 when in 1868 you guys said that you'll get this, you'll get that in the third?
Mhm.
And look what we're talking about in
In
2022.
Yeah.
But his okay,
What kind of shit
in
is
his
that?
approach on asking these people for, like, not even say asking, but the way he does, like the way he approaches these people when things don't go the right way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You don't find that like it's like he was begging them as opposed to standing up for his people, or we standing up for ourselves, or what?
Okay, so that statement, I don't like that statement, and here's why I don't like that statement. I would never put Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the same statement as not standing up for his people.
No, the reason why I'm saying
Because
this
he
is
literally
from,
took a bullet
from a lot of the stuff
for his people.
he took a lot, man. He
Yeah.
did get stabbed too at one point,
Right,
At
right.
some point. But what I'm saying is that in his speeches that he's
Right.
had before, I think even before that one,
Mm.
is where he's been telling people, let's not return violence.
Right,
With
okay.
violence.
The turn
You know what I'm
the cheek.
saying? But
Right.
these people were basically killing, bombing, doing all
Right.
these different things,
Okay.
which a lot of our people were slaughtered.
I get what you're saying.
Oh, so
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You don't think that's standing up for us?
So to me, it's not even just
I
about,
got
like,
you.
I understand his whole point to saying that we need, you know what I mean? We need to be included, but at the same
Right.
time, it's like if you have these people standing on your neck all the
Right.
time.
I got you. So you're saying the approach, so you're more like Malcolm, like
Well,
by
you
any means
see,
necessary.
in between those speeches was when Malcolm actually came out.
Right,
And
right.
unfortunately, he was assassinated a little earlier than him, but I
Right.
mean,
So okay, I'm glad you mentioned that because
Yeah.
I feel like both of those dudes were standing up for their people. They just had
They
very
were.
different approaches.
yes, they
At the
did,
time.
And even Malcolm at one point said that we will approach them this way. You know what I
Right.
mean? To get the civil rights movement going.
Mhm.
But if it fails, we need to take up arms and
Right.
fight back. And
Gotcha.
and Martin Luther was not for it. He was kind of like, no.
At
And I think
that
even
point.
At that point,
at that
in
point.
1963.
Yeah, at that
And we're gonna touch on that a little bit later. Okay, so
Yeah.
without further ado, let's play the second clip
All right.
and keep it moving.
There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality.
Okay.
All right, so in that part of the speech, Dr. Martin Luther King, I think he's alluding to the white folks, the media, and other white folks at the time saying, listen, man, like when are you guys gonna be satisfied? So at this point, after the bus boycott in the 50s and stuff like that,
Yeah.
there were some strides made within the civil rights movement, right? So he's alluding to the people saying, like, what are y'all still asking for? Like, come on.
Mhm.
So Dr. King said, well, why should we be satisfied when we have our people in the streets being brutalized by the police?
Yeah. Yeah.
So here in 1963, again, like I said earlier, we have Dr. King talking about police brutality. And what is the main issue in the news this year,
Yeah.
last year, and in 2020?
Yep. Police brutality.
I was gonna say, after a lot of his speeches, he's been arrested multiple times too. You know?
Of course.
Been arrested, and yeah.
So-
I think I think that this is why I have such a rigid stance. But this is why my overall stance is against integration, because if we look at, from civil rights, from the beginning of the civil rights movement to now,
Right.
what progress have we made?
Yeah.
Nothing. Which means that what we've been doing
I
hasn't
don't want.
worked.
I don't agree with nothing.
No. Okay.
Right.
I say nothing to downplay it a little.
Right.
Just to kind of like it. In my opinion, it's not enough.
Right.
And for such a long stretch, I think for such a long stretch, I would say that it was planned. It was purposely done this way, like the foot dragging, and because I don't think that this check that he spoke about in the first part,
Clip?
the first clip that he played.
Was ever meant for us.
Well, I think it was always a void check.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think
Gotcha.
they could ever cash that check because they owe us too much. And I think I've said that before in other episodes where
And
it's
the
like
truth.
they can't afford to pay us.
Yeah, yeah.
They can't afford to give us equality and they can't afford to pay us.
And you know what? I'm happy I too mentioned that because I'm gonna go as far to say this is gonna sound crazy disrespectful, but I agree with you. That check was never really
Yeah.
meant for us.
Yeah.
So it speaks to like, was Dr. King naive about that dream he had, right? And it's gonna come out a little bit later on in the one of the clips that we're gonna play. I know it sounds kind of disrespectful to call Dr. King naive,
Yeah.
even though he was all that he did for blacks.
Yeah.
But he actually said that about himself. So we'll get into that clip later on.
Yeah.
So are you saying that he was naive as an individual, or are you saying that should black folks?
I'm saying we were all naive.
Right, gotcha.
I'm saying we're all naive.
To believe
if
that
we
in
believe-
this system that they would have gave us.
We're naive because we're trying the same things over and over that never works. And when that was the
so
first
here's
time.
the
thing. Like I didn't answer this question before when because you were asking.
Oh, cool.
You were
Yeah,
asking
cool.
Okulawa
Cool.
specifically, but I actually commend Martin Luther King Jr. for taking a stance, regardless of what he believes. Even though I personally don't agree with his stance, I commend him for standing up and saying anything
Of
at all.
course.
Like that's all power to him. I think we need more of that, regardless of what your direction is. If you're willing to stand up for black people as a community, as a world community,
of course.
then hey, all power to you, and I would support that. I just didn't think that I just don't agree with the direction.
Right. Gotcha.
But you know,
Well,
all
we'll-
power
first
to him.
approach,
we're gonna get to that.
I was gonna say,
Right.
his first approach is fine. Like to say, okay, you did try something, but I'm saying after you take so many backlash.
Hey, hold on, my brother.
Yeah,
don't just say it's fine. Like, don't downplay that.
No. What I'm saying is that I see what he was trying to do.
Right.
But again, me and his approach, it's always like, okay, you were trying to get us in court with the system. You were trying to bring our people along, get us jobs within the system. But I'm saying, if we weren't welcome, then when do you put a stop to that?
Right.
And decide to say we need to build for ourselves and do for our own.
Right. Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
No. I totally I'm behind that for sure.
Yeah.
The reason why I wanted to talk about that second clip is because Dr. King was talking about police brutality.
Yes,
In
yeah,
1963.
That's
yeah.
still an issue today.
And the shit he went through was all that police brutality
Yeah.
himself.
I mean,
right?
I think a lot of non-blacks would say that it's like, and I think they're the naive ones as far as I'm concerned, because we face the same thing from the majority of the non-black population, or even just the white population, if you want to say, like, because at that time they didn't support Martin Luther King either.
Right.
And even now with all the protests, like Black Lives Matter, whether you support it or agree with it or not, or any other protests that black people, or any other issues black people have when they step out and they're ready to protest, what we hear is, why don't you guys are always crying for something, you guys are always begging for something, like it's always the same thing.
Yeah, we're in 2021. Like,
But
what are you guys still asking for?
Exactly.
But what isn't there? So we haven't gotten anything so far. So why are people still saying, "Oh, you guys are free now. You guys got this"? No, we're still facing red tape every step of the way.
Yeah. Red tape. Yeah, that's gonna be a topic too. Like, the government literally had policies where black people weren't allowed to buy.
Yeah.
Anyways,
like even the voting in 68 in 18. Well, sorry, I'm gonna miss. Anyway, even when the 14th Amendment was added,
right.
It still took 2 years because they were still turning people back, turning black people back from the polls, telling them stuff like, "Oh, you got the wrong information" and shit like that. Even then.
Yeah, so that alludes to the voting fraud stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Every time there's an election in the States, you hear all this stuff about people trying to make it harder for black folks to vote.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's very cyclical, right?
Yes.
In terms of the struggle, it seems like I know we've come a long way. I don't want to say we haven't got anything
Yeah.
and nothing's been done, but we're still talking about the same things like
Yeah,
45 years later,
Yeah.
100 years
that's
later,
the problem.
right?
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't, you know, it's so my point, not my takeaway, but my point to everything I've said so far is like it's been a long period of time,
Yeah.
Right.
and just one thing, police brutality alone isn't even done with. Like, why are we still dealing with police brutality? That's
Yeah.
my point. It's not like we haven't made any progress, because then that would be a discredit to everyone that's been standing up
Right.
and fighting so far, or even died. But why are we still like? Police brutality should not be an issue at all for any black person today,
Right.
because we've been facing that.
And for anybody that, for just in case you're watching and you don't believe that this police brutality thing is real,
Yeah.
we're gonna do an episode of the Toronto Police Services, which proves that the Toronto Police Service is racist.
Yes.
And even besides the police brutality, even when the police don't do anything about it, you still have to deal with those other political white groups that they form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'll do worse than the police brutality.
Yeah, you know the KKK.
Right? So like the KKK and all that, right? There was
Yeah.
the KKK, and I forget there was a name of another one that took on. I don't know if it's after or as the KKK was going. It was a white supremacy, something
So,
Legion, Black Legion or something Legion or something
Right.
like that. But I'm saying these are the citizens, they're themselves who take it upon themselves to, you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, let's jump on to the third clip here. Let's keep it moving, and let's see what we got.
Rights movement is dead. It's simply that we're moving to a new phase of the movement. For now 12 years, we struggled to end legal segregation and all of the humiliation surrounding legal segregation. So it was a struggle for decency. It was a struggle to get rid of extremist behavior toward Negroes. Now we are in a new phase, and that is a phase where we are seeking genuine equality, where we are dealing with hard economic and social issues. And it means that the job is much more difficult. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income. It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to get a program that will force the government to put billions of dollars into ending slums. It's a wonderful thing to work and be concerned about integrating public accommodations, integrating the public schools, which I will continue to work for with vigor and with zeal. But I've also got to be concerned about the survival of a world in which to be integrated. And these issues to me are tied together in that sense.
All right, so in this clip, I believe somebody was questioning Dr. King about his stance on the civil rights movement. So remember, this clip now is in 1967, right? So this is a full 4 years after the I Have a Dream speech.
Yeah.
Right, so I think somebody's questioning about his methodology seemed to have changed at this point, right? So someone was like, is the civil rights movement dead? Like, are you not still wanting integration and all that good stuff? So Dr. King here says that no, he still thinks it's important they fought for the legal segregation that was happening in the United States in the 50s and 60s, where black folks were legally kept out of places, right? So the integration was the opportunity to not be excluded from certain things, right? And now he's saying we're moving to a new phase of the movement, right? We struggled to end legal segregation. Now it's time for the new phase. So what is that new phase that Dr. King is talking about? He actually mentioned it here in the speech, where he says we're now seeking genuine equality, social and economic freedom. So we actually want to be treated equally. So integration, so that's where a lot of people today, they misconstrue the definition of integration. And a lot of black folks do that too. So integration does not automatically equal equality and equity. So
Obviously.
well, is it obvious?
It is obvious. It is obvious.
Is it? Because in his I Have a Dream speech, so let's give an example. Like I dream for a day of little black children and little white children can hold hands and play together freely.
Okay.
So being allowed in the same space. So to me, that would automatically mean that it wouldn't mean equality. For me, it doesn't mean equality, but I feel like some people would think it's equality. Just because you're allowed in here doesn't mean you get the same benefits of the white folks in here.
Okay, so I think when he's talking about that, so the I have a dream part, I think he is actually talking about equality. I don't think he's just talking about integration. I think his fight is for integration, but I think the dream was for equality.
Overall, yes.
Yeah. So when he's talking about I dream, one day that the whites and the black kids will be
right.
I think that's because that's what he's aspiring to, that dream of equality.
Right.
But he's starting with integration.
Right. So the difference is that we should be afforded the same opportunities. That's what I think integration is. The same opportunities.
It should,
right?
Yeah.
But the reason why his methodology was changing, it's like, okay, so integration is slowly happening, but like, why are we still falling back? Where's the quality? Right? So that probably has, I would ascribe that to the naivety of a lot of black folks, where they think, I just got to get in and I'm set.
You see,
I'm not sure. So, sorry.
No. I was gonna say, I bring up a good point. Like on that, no. In it, like I know it's 1960s. They had these college students. I saw this footage on these college students that were, again, as we were able to integrate, sitting at this restaurant. The restaurant did say no color in there or whatever. And the chief, I can't remember the chief of police's name. He sent busloads, school buses, took kids off the school bus and sent to put a lot of the adults in jail,
right? Just
because they were actually in the restaurant trying to integrate. Now, to me, right there, again, you got the integration, but where's the equality? Like, where are we treated as the same?
Right.
Right. And that's been going on for the longest while back then too. So.
Yeah, and that was my overall point, and I think you wanted to.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Do you remember the question you asked?
Yeah, so it's like now that we're integrated, right?
Yeah.
I don't see integration, and I think this is where Dr. King was at that point. This integration thing is not all we want. Like, where's the real stuff? Where's the government programs that were done for white folks after the war, right? Where's our social and economic programs to make sure we can do for our community and our families?
I think one of the mistakes we make is not knowing who we're fighting against. Like we don't seriously consider, I don't think us as a community, us as black people are properly educated on the stuff that whites especially are capable of. And it sounds bad. It sounds terrible. A lot of people aren't going to want to hear this out. But,
not what you gotta say.
But if you know who you're struggling against, you know what you kind of have an idea what the outcome is going to be, and that's why I commend. Why do we call him doctor? That's why I commend Martin Luther King Jr. for standing up for what he believed in and actually pushing in that area. And like I said before, I commend anyone that does anything like that. But didn't he know who these people, who white people are?
Because he had his doctorate. First of all, that's why we call him doctor.
His PhD. No, he got his PhD. He was young too when he got that.
Dr. King died when he was 30 years old. He was very young.
Yeah, he was young. Yeah, I think he was like 18 years old, something like that, when he got his PhD.
I don't know.
Well, I don't.
He was young. I'm just saying. They say he was young.
The reason why I know is
that's right. No, that's a good answer. I don't respect any of that, but that's cool. But that's my thing, and that's why we're still. So
to answer your question, I think he knew who he was talking about, because he mentioned all of the stuff that were being done to black folks, the police brutality and all that stuff. And like you said it yourself.
Where do you think this was gonna go?
You said it yourself. Here's a point of view that I have. I feel like And Dr. King, just like Marcus Garvey, they were trying to plant seeds in black folks, I believe.
In
In my opinion.
Like self-love,
Self-love, yes, that's one.
To like actually,
standing up
for yourself. Right?
stand up. So Marcus Garvey was all about black folks getting their own, building their own, creating businesses, creating work, uniting, and getting your own. And Dr. King was, like you said earlier, he was brave enough to stand up for black folks' rights.
Yeah, but
and
to push
opportunities.
We weren't accepted though.
Say that again?
To be pushed where we weren't accepted is how I look at it.
Right.
Because like he was fighting for us to be accepted into somewhere where we weren't accepted. They didn't accept us.
Right.
That exactly is my point. We're fighting, like, you remember, the hatred is much more real than we today even realize.
No, for
back
sure.
at that time, in that time, we could
trust me, man. I know what was going on back in that time.
Yeah, and I think I mean they make it look like Martin Luther King was black people's hero, and I doubt. I'm pretty sure he probably barely got 50% of support from black people.
Yeah. So at this point where he made this speech, they actually surveyed blacks, and like 55% of blacks did not approve.
You have a lot of whites that actually.
Yes, I would have been a part of that crowd that didn't approve because and it's nothing nefarious. It's not that it's not worth the effort.
Right.
Well, it's because I don't think it's worth the effort. Actually.
Right. So that's the thing, right? So you remember I mentioned naivety in the beginning, right?
Yes.
So I feel like at this point he was realizing like, okay, like what are we really doing here? So I think he came to that realization a little bit, and the methodology, started changing a little bit.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And like 78% of whites did not approve of him either. To your point, because he was speaking against the war.
But what I mean is, he had some that, like, if you are integrated, they joined the cause, and that's how he got his numbers, as far as I.
Well, no. So the numbers here is that blacks and whites were not favorable towards him at this point.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with he was very anti-war at this point. And back in that day, America was very pro-war. I mean, they seem kind of pro-war still in this day and age.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why I wanted to play that that clip. And let's move on to the fourth clip and see what's good.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
So Dr. King said we are coming to get our check. So let me break this clip down for you guys again. So Dr. King was mentioning all of the government programs, the subsidies, the colleges, right? So all government funded and the land that was provided for white folks in America. That was not afforded to black folks in America. He said something about, I'm sure everybody's heard this statement before. Why don't you just fucking work hard and, you'll make things happen for yourselves. I don't disagree with that statement if we're just looking at that statement in a vacuum, right? But let's put it in context of America, right? And the time Dr. King mentioned that. So why is it important that he's mentioning the government programs and land and stuff that was created for white folks, the low interest rates that they were afforded that we didn't have any access to?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important? Because you're not giving or affording those stuff to black folks, but yet you're telling them, no, all it takes is for you to work hard to be successful and to generate wealth and the stuff that you want.
Mm-hmm.
But then these other groups
Yeah.
are afforded those things
Mm-hmm.
Easily.
that easily puts them in a position to generate that wealth, to pass it down to their generations and kids.
Yeah.
But nah, nigga, you gotta go out there and work hard.
Yeah.
Just work hard and you'll get what you
Yeah.
what you
I
want.
think that was the trick.
Mhm.
I think that was the trick with integration. The trick with integration is from their point of view is, well, we have this system that we control, right? That we could do certain things, integrate them into it. We could still keep them at a low level, as opposed to them going somewhere else, huddling together and starting their own
Right.
to rival us. Because if you think about it, if we segregated, they'd still have, I guess, a modicum of control. Like there's still certain things that the system could still do. The system that is United States of America. There's still certain things that they might be able to do, but not as dangerous, or maybe not as easily as
Right.
they'd be able to if we are integrated into the system. And that, I think, is the
You see,
problem.
and they had a threat with that because when we were able
We've done that before, yeah.
exactly with that the same Black Wall Street,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you see what I'm
that-
saying, and they're
yes.
afraid of that.
In
Yes.
Oklahoma.
They're afraid of that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's one of the things I use as my proof, or as because again, I prefer us to pay attention to who these people really are before we actually make moves and make strategic moves.
Right.
And why integrate into a racist system?
And
Yeah.
and this is the year his methodology was changing.
And
This is
yeah.
So
this
he's-
is
he's
this is
getting
actually
to realize
shortly
that now.
before he was assassinated.
Yeah.
And which is think about that point, right? So okay, so you're talking about systems and coming to get your check off. Fuck, what is he talking about?
And that's
You're
when he
leading
decided
all
to
these
take
people?
arms, man. Yep.
If he gets this message out to all these black folks that they deserve their check and they need to come and get it,
Mhm.
we're gonna have a real problem.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, he was
He
assassinated.
knew
that
it
same
was
year.
he knew it was coming towards the end though.
Yeah, and to
Right,
make them
because-
look,
Mhm.
and to make themselves look like he is a hero, and
Mhm.
we agree with what he was
Mhm.
fighting for. They put him as such, but don't ever
Yeah.
mention certain parts of these.
Yeah,
I don't hear these
exactly.
things.
No, and this is why I wanted to go over these clips because we don't hear these things.
No.
Yeah.
All we hear is the I Have a Dream
Have a
stuff.
Dream
So every
That's what he's known for.
there's a Dr. King Day. I think it's January 20th. That's his birthday.
See,
Or
that's
19th. I can't remember.
No, that's what was a question I had to ask
Yeah.
about that because I was like his birthday. I think it said it was the 15th. So I want to know why they celebrate on I think it was the 17th. They were saying they celebrated it or
Okay,
something like
so
that,
then-
and that kind of I was like I don't get it. I get it in the month of January,
Right.
but the dates
Oh, they changed
itself, yeah, they changed the dates, and I don't,
Right,
I
so-
don't know for it.
Okay, so whenever the date is, my point is that every time we think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we think about the I Have a Dream
Turn the
speech
cheek.
Mhm.
and turn the other cheek, and we're here solidly. We're gonna protest, and
Mhm.
we're not gonna cause any trouble.
Mhm.
That's what you hear. You don't hear these things where
Yeah.
Dr. King seemed like he was
Coming around
to another side,
yeah, hey.
like Malcolm X side.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm thinking also, the reason he's probably not placed there to be our hero. He's probably placed there to just be an example of how black people should protest for white people, because you still hear that from white people.
Of
today.
course.
Mhm.
Like, why do you guys have to make a ruckus? Why do you guys have to destroy the neighborhoods? Why do you guys have to, like, as if they don't understand? And I don't think they do, for the most part. I don't think that they understand the situation that we're in and the situation that
Yeah,
we've been in for
yeah.
such a long time. And
Of course, they don't understand.
to speak on the government assistance, that still happens today.
Of course.
And I don't know if that it was
It-
on air that we talked about it or
What's
off
that?
air. When, like, if you look at the richest guys today in America.
Oh yeah.
They're it's the same. That's how they
Yeah.
got there.
Yeah, if you look at what's his name? man?
Elon Musk, all of them. Jeff
yeah,
Bezos,
yeah.
all of them. They all get government support.
subsidies.
They
Support,
all
yeah.
get, and
All
that's
of
the reason they're billionaires
Yeah.
because of this
We
government
don't
support,
get- yeah.
right? And still to this day, we are told that you just have to work hard. These guys work hard.
Exactly.
Why don't you work hard?
And that's
Because
exactly-
we don't get the government support.
There you go. That's exactly why I wanted to play that clip, because you hear people say work hard, like your color, your race, that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
When all these other folks are getting
All
the
the
government
opportunities,
subsidies
yeah.
that we weren't getting at that time, and
And
even
still
today.
not allowed to
But
get
that's it's sad because that's them taking care of their own.
Yeah.
Which
But-
we would need to bend that.
Well,
curve.
that's
But what do we
Yeah,
expect?
Take
What do we
care of our own.
expect from their system?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's
That's
them
okay.
taking care of their
Yes.
own. So that's
Yeah.
why I say again with the segregation now, it's
It'll be us taking care of ourselves.
exactly.
We got to start taking care of our own.
Exactly.
And it's for me, in my opinion, it was no coincidence that he died shortly after.
Right, yeah,
saying
right at
that.
that
Yeah,
time when
yeah,
his
it is,
point of view is beginning
It
to
is
change.
not a coincidence. And we're going to get into that part
Mm.
with the next clip, and let's run
Yes,
that
let's
right
do
now.
I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul-searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism.
All right, so
That's powerful right there.
so in this quote here, this was actually a clip from an interview he did on NBC in a Baptist church.
Okay.
Right? They came and they interviewed him at one of the churches down there.
Mhm.
So Dr. King said that he believes that his dream had turned into a nightmare, right? Quote unquote, he said he's doing some self-reflection, some soul searching, and he's come to a realization that we might have been chasing some superficial things.
Mm-hmm. No, that was 2 years after Malcolm actually went.
So this is in '67,
Yeah, and Malcolm died 65,
right?
right? And that's what I'm saying. After all his with the Nation of Islam and all that too,
Right.
right? After all the brutality he went through, and then they killed him, I'm saying he should have had time to reflect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? To look at, let's say, okay, we've tried everything. I have a brother over here who's trying to fight me about saying that we need to stop this whole China integrate, you know what I
Hold
mean,
hands
and
and
break
all that.
from them and stuff like that. And I think they even had problems between each other because
Well, like I
one
said, their
point when-
methodologies were very different.
Exactly. But Malcolm gave him the upper hand to say, "We'll try it. We'll try it this way." But once it didn't happen, he
Right.
was more of like, "We need to pick up arms and go after." And that was with the Black Panthers being formed and all that.
Right.
Look what happened to all of that.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
So no, that's
Yeah,
a very
I think
good point.
He was able to look at all that and,
Exactly.
and realize.
Definitely,
Mhm.
because this is. I remember I mentioned being naive earlier in with describing Dr. King, and I didn't want anyone to take that take offense to that. But this is Dr. King saying he was naive.
Yeah.
Like this is him saying,
I never even
I
heard
felt
that
like
footage
that
before,
dream
too.
has now turned into a nightmare because
Mhm.
the fight for integration, there was some, let's say, some progress there.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
There was some progress for integration.
There was, yeah.
But then he's looking at what happened with Malcolm and where we're at actually as a people in 1967. I was like, okay, did I do this the wrong way?
Yeah.
Right? That was a lot of self-reflection
Yeah.
and him coming to that point.
Yeah, here's some more insight into that. I would say, I do think progress was made in his fight for integration, but see, remember when we want integration, we want to be integrated into the system. We want to be allowed to do certain things that everyone else
There was a
are
lot.
allowed to, or just
I would say same
white
opportunity.
Americans
Mhm.
are allowed to do. Yeah, we want the same opportunities. Here's something that I don't think we think about a lot. Or maybe it comes to mind, but we don't really, we don't think about it too much. But here's the thing. When when schools were desegregated because of the Brown and the Brown versus the Board
Before
of
that, right?
Education, we find that it's not the system. It's not only the system that's the problem, and this is why I say that we need to know who we're dealing with, because it wasn't the system that was burning schools down. It was just white people that didn't want black kids in their kids' schools, so they burned.
Yep.
And there are some schools that they burned down twice. They burned it down, it was rebuilt, and they burned it down again. And this is not government, or maybe it's an extension of the government.
I was just
Who
going to say
knows?
that.
But it's white people that this is how white people behave when you're doing something that makes them uncomfortable.
Of course, it's a reflection, because when you, so let's say a fight leads to such system giving way, like, okay, here, have a little bit of this. There's going to be some extreme folks that'll be like, nah, fuck all that. You can't have that. We don't want that. So we're going to burn your shit down, and we don't want you a part of this.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a system that those white folks are used to that they don't want to see. Like,
I think it's more than that.
And that's where the KKK and the Black Legion I was talking about before was formed, in a sense, because when police weren't doing what they thought should be done for their city, their town, or whatever, they formed these groups.
right.
Because even with again, I'm always bringing up Malcolm X. 'Cause when I as much as I read about Martin Luther, he comes up, right?
No,
But I'm
Malcolm
saying
X is coming real soon.
With
Trust me.
him, I'm saying even with his own father, because his father, like he raised him as in a way saying, we're gonna do for self, we're gonna build our own and this and that, right?
Right.
They were called the uppity niggas and all this shit like that. He was actually killed from a streetcar just running over him, and they don't know. They believe that, you know what I mean, someone else took it up into their arms to do this, to murder him.
Who was killed?
Malcolm X's father,
Okay, gotcha.
right? And this is what I'm saying. Whenever we look at police brutality and we look at the policing, but sometimes this is not them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The people. That's what I'm saying when he says look at the people you're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I think it's
in a whole.
It's not. It's weird that we. Like, if I was to place myself in that time, I mean, just a little bit that I could imagine, I suppose. Schools are now desegregated, let's say, and now I'm allowed to go to a white school. Why the fuck would I want to go to a white school? I gotta go deal with the same white kids that's gonna be picking on me every day, trying to, like, I mean. I understand the push, but I don't quite get it. I don't quite get why we want to put ourselves in situations like that.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, did we have actual schools for
No, we
blacks?
never had.
That's what I'm saying. So
it was
that's
just
probably-
integration. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now you know you're allowed as a black dad, you're allowed to send your child to a white school.
Yeah.
Right.
To be educated, as they would call it.
Yeah.
Right. But-
Yeah, whatever economic opportunity. I mean, there. So you know, I say I talk a lot about the indoctrination and all that bullshit, but I do agree that at that time, I mean, if you are looking for economic inclusion, then you have to go through the school
Schooling
system,
to
right?
learn about
For you to be able to get, because if they're accepting college students for specific jobs, then you want to go through that process. So I get that. I'm not bashing any of that, but to put yourself, if I was to imagine me sending my son to a school now that's just been desegregated, that's way
It's
too
rough.
much fucking headache for me, man.
It's rough.
That's too much.
Well,
that's too much for me.
Ruby Bridges, we're going to talk about her
Yeah.
later on too. She's still alive to this day.
Yeah.
She was the first,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? She was the first. So, yeah, I mean, so to your point, Okulwa, I feel like Dr. King was doing a lot of reflection, to the point where it's like, nah, man. That dream stuff I was talking, nah, we gotta go get it. We're not waiting for anything like that. And I feel like at that point is where it's like, I understood where Malcolm was going
with it.
and how he was trying to do things. Because Malcolm X was by any means necessary.
Yeah.
We ain't waiting for shit. We're taking it. We're gonna protect our
we're gonna
own.
take it.
We're gonna do it for ourselves. Malcolm X reminded me of who I think is the greatest black historian that did a lot more for black people than anybody in the modern era, Marcus Garvey. Malcolm X reminded me of Marcus Garvey because Marcus Garvey is one of the first that I can remember that was preaching that we got to do for selves and we got to go
But he
get
was,
it.
was he
no
as
matter what.
militant? Like, was he as
Yes, he
militant?
was. Yes, he
Okay.
was.
Yeah.
He was. Not only was he as militant as Malcolm X, but that's where Malcolm X got his inspiration
Yeah,
from.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was preaching, you
Yeah.
know,
And
having
Marcus
soldiers
Garvey,
and
yeah.
having groups and protection and everything.
You mentioned
That's
um,
one of the. I heard that was one of, like, while he was in jail or whatever. That's one of the books, or it was. I don't know if it was a book or something he was reading about Marcus Garvey and a bunch of others. So,
you mentioned Black Legion.
that was the
Not too long ago.
name. Yeah.
Isn't that's Marcus Garvey actually? I don't think that's Malcolm X. You,
Well,
something
Black
you
Legion-
said. Yeah, you said.
No. I think the Black Legion was a white supremacy group.
Right.
Yeah, that's
was
what you said.
against, yeah.
Yeah.
What's Marcus had a group.
He did have a group. I forget the
Yeah.
name of the group,
It's
but it's
something
actually
Legion.
in this book right here.
Yeah,
Um,
something Legion.
Okay.
I think it is.
Yes, there's some Legion. I think Legion is the name, but we digress.
Yeah,
so
we'll-
we're gonna
yeah,
have the
we'll
episode.
sort that out.
Yeah.
Talking about Marcus Garvey, and I feel like all of the leaders, the black leaders that came after, were inspired.
Yes.
They
by
were
Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
So today we just wanted to highlight these 5 clips because up until 2 years ago, I didn't know Dr. King was saying these things in 1963 and in 1967, right? And everybody knows him for the "I Have a Dream," integration, and being treated equal and stuff like that. Nobody really knows, and I feel like that's by design.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though the speech,
You still
all
gotta
these things are
search,
public record.
Yeah.
It's by design what people are going to perpetuate in the mainstream. So I just wanted to highlight those things, start a conversation around it, and let us know what you guys think about those clips.
Yeah. You could listen to the whole speech on Google, I believe. Well, that's the I Have a Dream speech.
But you can find those clips.
Yeah, these things. I think I'll put it in the description where you can go and find and listen to these clips in their entirety, because I think it's important for Black folks to hear it, and I think it's important for a lot of non-blacks to hear
Yeah,
it as
I
well.
think it's for everyone.
right?
And for us, I think it helps us to decide. I think it helps us. We should educate ourselves on a lot of these things. A lot of the people that fought for us.
Yeah.
Back in the
Open
day.
a lot of
Yeah, because
a lot of ways.
now like we know what not to do anymore.
Right.
Like, cause we know like we said earlier. I mean, police brutality is still an issue when it comes to Black folks.
Yeah.
Right? Are we getting worse, or like you'd have to question what's going on?
What's going on?
Why is there still so much hate for Blacks? Right? And it's been how long?
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I'd like to highlight for my takeaway that we should know who we're dealing with. You need to know who these people are. You need to know what they did to you. You need to know that they used to cut babies from pregnant women's belly
And
back in the day.
yeah.
Not that long ago. You used to have barbecues where the Black person was the barbecue. You used to have
sodomizers. They used to do a lot of shit.
a lot of
man. A lot of shit
so
to
once
them.
you understand what, then you know you're not fighting against a government. You're not fighting just against a system, but a people that really don't
Because
like you.
who makes up the system, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's the there's people that really don't like you as a Black person, and honestly, I don't understand why. I do have some ideas.
Yeah, there's
I have a lot of ideas actually,
the penile from
but I think that's what us as a community need to look into. Like, and then once you realize, well, there's no changing these people's mind. And yes, there's probably a larger amount of whites today that are more accepting. And I'll just say more accepting. I won't say like or love us or anything like that.
maybe a little bit more sympathetic.
They're
There's some
more-
allies. We can't lie.
They're more accepting. There's some non-blacks that are more accepting today, but I don't think we should get fooled by that. I still think that we should stand up and work for ourselves, because the system is still not at any point where we want to integrate into it.
Yeah,
That's what's so good about the system.
we're talking-
When you just look at that again, it's a point that we brought up before too. Just the word policing itself, where it came from, and what it was all about to where it is now. I mean, to tell me I can't drive 60 kilometers down the street, you know what I'm saying? And you put a sign there saying it's 50. Like,
What is you?
No, I'm just saying about all the shit that these
Man
guys,
don't like rules.
these guys have implemented their own rules.
Yeah, fuck your speed limits. Black people.
All of us.
Hey.
All of us. But, so if they can do that to everybody, imagine what they can do to us.
Alright, black folk.
I'm saying, man.
Fuck the
all
speed
starting
limits.
noise.
Do what it do. That's what this nigga is saying right here. I don't know about all that.
I'm just saying, man.
If
they
you
put
see
rules
60
into
do
this,
double,
man.
man.
I'm telling you, you should be able to do double because I ain't doing shit.
This
to
nigga.
nobody,
Hey,
you know?
that's not the
But that's
opinion.
privilege right there.
That is not
privilege.
that is not the opinion of Northern Bloc voices. Just some weird nigga.
I'm
going
just
off his
saying.
mouth.
I'm just saying, man.
But yeah, man.
I'll
So
knock him any chance I get. But yeah,
like I said, so on this episode alone, you see that even all of our ideas weren't the same. Our opinions weren't the same.
yeah.
But guess what? We all want the same for our people.
For our people, yeah,
right?
exactly.
We're looking for the unity. We want to break down that division that's in our community, in Canada, all around the world, and come together. And with that said, I'd like to thank y'all for rocking with us for this episode. Leave your comments down below for the ones listening. We got more fire coming for you next week.
Yep.
And
Thanks for making it this far.
yes, sir. My name is Naboos from
we
the
got
Northern Black.
way farther to go with this, man.
I too.
So we down.
We out. Northern Black
Pull up.
Voices. We out.
All right.
Peace.